So many people start the year by planning out what they're going to make with a Make 9. Those are usually sewing patterns or specific silhouettes that they want to try sewing through the year. I'm going to change my Make 9 into my overall goals for what I want to learn, do, and explore through sewing in 2024. Come along for the ride with me. Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Robin. I'm a sewist, a pattern maker, a sewing community builder, and a fashion designer. I've been sewing for 7 years, and I believe I'm a bit advanced beyond my years because I've been extremely intentional in my sewing journey to really learn new skills year after year. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about what my goals are for 2024. How do I turn that simple garment into something that's on the next level? I want to infuse a little bit more creativity and artistry into what I'm making. I want to find the specific techniques that I'm going to have to use over and over and over again and just get very good at being able to produce that with no instructions and with a high level of fluency. My overall goals for what I want to learn, do, and explore through sewing in 2024. So for my Make 9, I've divided it into 3 different sort of topic areas or zones. This first one is technique, the next one is artistry, and then the third one is a little bit of a grab bag, but it's really about putting what I want to make out into the world and presenting that in the most beautiful way. So the very first goal on my list is tailoring. And through that, I want to get better at working with the materials and the methods that are used in tailoring. If you follow me on my blog on Instagram, you already know that I am obsessed with fit. As a 6'2" sewist, I have to spend so much of my attention making things fit me properly and probably going above and beyond maybe what's necessary to make sure that I have the best possible fit. So I don't mean that side of tailoring because I've been exploring that since I first started sewing. I mean more about getting more confident sewing the small details that are seen in tailored garments and sewing those with precision. Those include welt pockets, splits, hems, bound buttonholes, really all of the little tiny details that aren't necessarily described in sewing patterns very well, but are so important to what you're creating. Another thing that I want to learn better in the tailoring landscape is interfacings. I have never done sort of the old school tailoring methodology of using hair canvas and doing pad stitching and any of those. So I would like by the end of the year to do a little practice in those. But overall, I just want to understand better like what's the right interfacing to use with this and that in order to get the best possible outcome. In terms of making these goals very measurable, not all of them are super tied down to numbers, but I know for this tailoring goal, my very first project I've already started on, I am going to be attending DC Frocktails as a guest. Yay, I don't have to put on my like organizing hat for this one. But my intention for DC Frocktails is to sew myself a suit out of a wool, I think it's a wool cotton blend. It's got stripes and it's going to be fantastic. I am going to be working on that by making a double-breasted blazer. It's going to require muslin beforehand. It's got buttons on the sleeves. It's got a slit on the back. It's got not princess seams quite, but side seams and darts, and it should give me a lot of really good practice towards my goal of getting better at the materials and the methods with tailoring as my first goal. So my next goal for 2024, I haven't talked about quite as much on this channel, and I do owe you some more videos on the topic, but it is industrial sewing techniques. This past year, I was lucky to be able to buy an industrial sewing machine used, and I also had an extremely, difficult, arduous, goal-focused. I had an extremely goal-focused year, we'll say. I launched my clothing brand, Robin Bendele, and while this dress, which is a part of it, was made by a factory, I did also make garments like this dress back here myself. And I have the intention of kind of creating a balance between what I have the factory make and what I self-produce in some smaller goods, so that I can really explore my creativity for Robin Bendele and do things below the minimums that a factory setting would allow. Industrial sewing techniques don't have to just be used for like a factory setting or for sales. Overall, I want to get better at sewing faster. That's been my goal for years, and I've gotten a lot faster. But when I think about industrial sewing techniques, I think using fewer pins, overall increasing efficiency by like batch sewing, doing repetitive processes, but moreover, getting so practiced with certain techniques that it's like I've put in the 10,000 hours, like I've done something 200 times. In other words, I want to be able to feel fluent in my sewing and not need instructions for a zipper fly every time that I need to sew it. And for my Robin Bendele collection that I showed on the runway during New York Fashion Week back in September, I actually had 6 garments that had a zipper fly in them. So I got a lot of practice, but every single time I did that, I still needed to like refer back to the instructions, and it just makes it a lot slower and more difficult and less fluent. I want to find the specific techniques that I'm going to have to use over and over and over again, and just get very good at being able to produce that with no instructions and with a high level of fluency. So yeah, if you're really into industrial sewing, I have a saga about bringing my industrial sewing machine home that I hope to share with you. So let me know in the comments if you want to see that and are curious about what machine I got and how I managed to get it home through New York City. All right, my third goal here in this technique section of my Make 9 for 2024 is using my cover stitch, which is that machine right there, and overall getting better at visible stitch techniques. I've been getting much better at top stitching over the years. I feel like I'm very proficient at top stitching, but overall, I don't feel like I'm using all of my machines to their potential. I'm not very good at using my cover stitch yet. I just had like a failed attempt at chain stitching with it. I don't know how to thread it without looking at instructions every time, and I haven't really been able to use it for the top stitching on knits, which is really why I got it. So I want to use my machines more to their potential, and I want to have more professional finishes. I want to unlock the potential of sewing better knitwear faster. Beyond that, I want to infuse a little bit more creativity and artistry into what I'm making. Namely, I've had a quilting sewing machine. No, it's not that one. It's that one. There's 3 back there. I've had a quilting edition sewing machine for the past 4 years, maybe 3-4 years, something like that. But I still haven't used free motion quilting. I haven't used any of the quilting techniques because it's not generally a part of the garment making and garment construction that I focused on. So I would really like to focus more on more artistic stitching techniques, blending the technical and the creative, and get over the fear of failure that I have with using those machines and trying out new techniques. And so I'm gonna need to find some projects that get me using the cover stitch more. I'm probably gonna need some more knitwear in my life. So yeah, if you have recommendations, please send them my way for the cover stitch. I would love to create a video or document the process of going from like 0 to hero with that machine and just getting a lot better with using it. It's definitely a machine that's like a nice to have, but a friend was selling it at a reduced cost, and so that's why I bought it, and I've used it for literally one project in the 2.5 years that I've had it, so this is the year that I'm going to actually use it. If you're watching this video and you are new to sewing in 2024 and you're hoping that I'm going to like give you the keys to success for learning how to sew, I'm not doing that in this video, but I do have classes for you. I partnered with Skillshare. I recorded 5 classes that will take you from 0 sewing skills to pretty intermediate advanced sewing skills. They're over on Skillshare. I teach them all, and I highly recommend them for you if you want to learn how to sew. We go through the basis of setting up a sewing machine. There's a class focused on sewing with commercial patterns. There's a class that explores artistry and comes up with pattern hacking and ideas of sketching out what you want to make. There is a class on matching prints and patterns. garments for the perfectionists out here, or just the people that want to have a more elevated wardrobe without breaking the bank. And lastly, there's a class that is so near and dear to my heart that is about creating a muslin and learning how to get garments to fit you, because listen, we're not all the size of the envelope. So if you are interested in learning how to sew in 2024, I highly recommend you check out my classes on Skillshare. Tap the link in the description to get your first 30 days free and join me on this sewing journey this year. All right, we're into our next set of 3 goals and sewing priorities for 2024, and that is artistry. So I did a lot in 2023, including learning how to match and update prints. I actually designed the print of this dress that I'm wearing. It is the Denver dress. It is currently for sale. Check it out at robinbandele.com. Slight plug. I explored so much in the artistry space with Robin Bandele and execution, but I don't feel like I fully realized what I wanted to do from the perspective of making garments feel unique and making them feel elevated and making them feel artistic and coming up with new and different silhouettes. So I have 3 different goals here that are focused on that. The first is trims and fabric manipulation. I tend towards, or historically have tended towards, garments with more simple silhouettes because they've helped me to discover how to get garments to fit properly. I want to be able to keep making like a simple button-down shirt, but I also want to learn how do I elevate that with trims? How do I turn that simple garment into something that's on the next level? And often when I'm researching different ideas, the ways that you elevate the garments are either through different fabrics or through additive things that make it more special. And often those are trims or different manipulation techniques like tucks and pleats and interesting dart placement, etc. So I do want to play around a bit with specifically trims and fabric manipulation techniques that keep using simple silhouettes but elevate them to another level. One quick pause right there. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. It really helps me to find my audience. And if you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button so that you can see more content from me. All right, my next goal for 2024 is something that I have been wanting to do for the last several years, and I really don't know why I still haven't done it, but that is sewing on the bias and making things that are bias cut. I have a couple of store-bought dresses that fit me actually surprisingly well. I mean, they don't really fit my proportions being that I'm tall, but the way that they hug my curves is just like, chef's kiss, so good. I just haven't sewn anything on the bias yet. I think it's partially because so much of what I make ends up being like speed sewing, where I'm kind of like at the last minute trying to make it work. And you can't really speed sew with bias cut garments because you have to let them hang for a while so that you can hem them and so on and so forth. The other drawback or thing that has held me back from sewing on the bias is needing a very large cutting surface because you're turning the fabric or you're turning your pattern on the side. So I want to overcome that hurdle. Ultimately, it means that I'm going to be able to create like minimalist looks that are like fitting so well and so sophisticated. So I know there's some great bias cut options out there. I think the pattern line, I believe, has like really great bias cut patterns. So if you have recommendations, send them my way. But before the end of 2024, I want to see my body in something bias cut. The last priority in this artistry section for me is draping. I am not a draper. Long story short, I am someone who has learned sewing through paper pattern making, using math and calculations in order to figure out how things get made. I really want to be able to create garments that live outside of the confines of things that are made to fit my proportions or matching a sloper. I do have 2 dress forms right now. I have the mini dress form right here, and I have this larger dress form. Actually, you can see the tape on the mini. It has the tape that I put down to draft this dress over here, but you could barely call that draping because it is still like a flat garment and form-fitting. The thing that has held me back from getting into draping is, one, nerves. I got that, I think, at the end of 2022, and I only used it for 2 or 3 different garments. And so I want to create a routine of exploring my creativity and practicing my draping techniques on the mini. But ultimately, what I really want to invest in is a dress form that matches my unique proportions. Again, I'm tall, I'm 6'2". There's no dress form that I can buy that is factory made that is going to match my body and allow me to pull it off the dress form and put it on my body. This dress form, while it is expandable, like it's all in the wrong places. The heights, the proportions, where the boobs sit, it's all in the wrong places. And so I'm hoping that hopefully through maybe pattern sales, I can raise a little bit of money and get myself a custom-made dress form so I can play with shape more and take things out of the confines of just having it fit my body in the traditional silhouettes and move towards more artistic silhouettes. All right, so this last section I've decided to call presentation. It's a little bit of the little grab bag of ideas, but let's dive into what I mean by my sewing goals around presentation. The first is kind of counter to where I thought I would be. I'm turning 35 next month, but what I find myself wanting is to like explore my youth while I still have it and not get so stuck into this mindset of like always dressing like I'm going to a professional space and dressing with modesty. And so I would like my personal style presentation to be slightly less modest, slightly less covered up in this year. That's my goal. It doesn't have to be your goal, but that's my goal. I started this goal already in 2023. Before setting this goal, I found myself kind of overthinking how I might be able to wear a garment with a bra. I'm always thinking about, okay, but like, how do I create support for me? And so I tried to turn that on its head in 2023, and I intentionally made a number of garments, especially through the summer, where I could not wear a traditional bra. I served those needs with like sticky bras, tape, and just not wearing one. And that just helped me to be less constrained in the silhouettes that I deal with. So for this year, I want to think about showing more skin, also just like not making things hit at my natural curves in such a standard way. So lower waistlines, maybe lower necklines. I don't think I need to make my necklines too much lower. I pretty much always go low for my necklines. More cutouts. Some of my favorite garments that I've made have had cutouts. Ultimately, I just want the garments that I make to reflect sort of my body image. I think sometimes I tend towards making things that cover me up because I'm not proud of not being toned in this area or feeling floppy in that way or feeling like I need to hit a certain fitness goal before I can put that garment on. In balance with, actually being more intentional in my fitness journey, like using my rowing machine, running more this year, I want to not be worried about like how I think others are going to perceive me in certain clothes vis-a-vis like my body. Get more comfortable with the notion that my flesh doesn't need to be constrained or controlled in order for me to feel empowered. Okay, my next goal for 2024 in the presentation sphere is more mood boarding for this year. I really started to do this at the beginning of last year. You may know that I released the Quincy dress sewing pattern in Talco magazine, but when I had to deliver my presentation to share what I intended to make for that pattern, I created a mood board, which meant that I looked at a lot of different historical and current references to find like what is the essence of the silhouette that I want to construct. That really helped me to, one, take inspiration and use it as inspiration and not to copy it, not to like do the same thing over again, but to say like, yeah, I like the vibes of that. I like the fabric usage of that. I like that trim. I like that top stitching, and kind of blend that together into something that is uniquely my style. And so I think that that is really helpful as a tool. Mood boarding has been very helpful for me in all the design work that I've done this year. And it helps me to stop with the endless scrolling on Pinterest and to really focus my ideas on the little details and the design decisions. But it also really helps me to reduce my procrastination sewing. People who know me know that I tend to wait until the very last minute to sew something, but often I do so with a plan in advance. But if I can make my mood boards even better, then I have a lot of those decisions that keep me procrastinating and that keep me putting off starting sort of filled out in advance and done with less pressure, so that I can gather the materials and check the patterns and do all that and not wait till the last minute. I also have been using mood boarding as concepts for styling photo shoots, both for my Robin Bendele photo shoots and then for things that I do for my personal branding. And I want to lean into more photo shoots and more artistry through the medium of photography and videography, of course, but ultimately, I want those to have more intention and not just be like, oh, this is the setup, so this is how it's going to be. I want it to be more intentional. And then ultimately, photography and videography, that is the way that I communicate with my friends, with my sewing community, with everyone in the world of what I make. Because it's not just what I sew, it's also how do I present that to other people? And so I'm hoping that I can develop more of a platform to inspire other sewists, other tall women, other style interested people in general. As an extreme extrovert, I get so much back from any of those experiences where I'm sharing what I've made with the world. By creating more mood boards, I think that I will just express my intention more clearly in my sewing. So yeah, I've already created a number of mood boards for some of the things that I want to put together in the next several weeks and months. So I'm really curious, should I share how I create my mood boards and kind of what I think about and share the process more? Should it be here on YouTube? Should it be on Instagram? Do you like seeing that process of where the inspiration comes from before something gets made? Let me know in the comments if that's something you think I should share with you. My very last one is actually kind of a big goal. And I stuck it in this presentation category, but it's kind of so many things. I want to get better at digital pattern drafting, projector sewing, and releasing sewing patterns. Those three. They're all connected, and I'll tell you how. First, as I learned and did the process with the Quincy dress for Talco magazine, that was a big project for me last year to really form so much of my knowledge together, my Adobe Illustrator knowledge, my design knowledge, my pattern drafting knowledge, my pattern fitting knowledge, to pull it all together into one place and to create a product. I want to do more of that this year, partially because I'm a full-time entrepreneur and I think that sewing patterns are potentially a bigger part of how I can support myself, but also just I enjoy doing it. I like making things. I am coming up with new silhouettes pretty much all the time. And so I want to do more of that, but it starts with the digital pattern making instead of paper pattern making. I learned with the Quincy dress, it's not great for me to start on paper and then try to get the right photo of it and then try to take it to Illustrator. It's better if I start the pattern drafting directly from the computer. And so now that I'm starting it from the computer, then instead of having to print it out onto a bazillion different pieces of paper and then tape those together and cut those up and then sew the garment, the alternative is going and have it printed on a larger format piece of paper, which is pretty expensive. I want to be able to project it from my new projector, which I will show you maybe later, down onto my fabric, down onto my muslin, and make some drafts with it. And I think that will speed up my pattern making process and get me towards releasing more patterns this year. I'm trying to figure out the best way of going about creating a tester audience. So yeah, if you want to become a tester for my patterns, please drop a comment below. I'm open to all skill levels. So those have been my 9 priorities for my sewing goals for 2024. The 3 categories being technique, artistry, and presentation. The 9 goals being tailoring, industrial sewing technique, use of my cover stitch and visible sewing techniques, trims and fabric manipulation, bias cut and draping, showing more skin in what I create, mood boarding and more styling, and lastly, the big umbrella that is digital pattern drafting, projector sewing, and releasing sewing patterns. These are all lofty goals. None of these are things that I'm going to completely, totally master within the year of 2024, but I'm hoping that they're going to get me a lot closer to where I want to be. I'm about to hit 5 years of sewing a completely handmade wardrobe and not buying clothes, and so I think that all of these goals that I have will really work their way into my wardrobe, and so there are going to be multiple uses for them. I hope you've enjoyed this look at my sewing priorities for 2024. I hope to share more with you in the coming weeks. Again, let me know in the comments below which of these goals really speak to you, and if you want to see more videos on any of these topics, I'm happy to make them when I find the time. But I hope you have a really beautiful 2024, and I hope you'll come back. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel to see more as I develop sewing and dressmaking and all of these priorities with you. Thanks again. Have a great one.